So let's talk about a few rumours from the upcoming balanced Dataslate that have been circulating on the internet. Could there be downgrades to 3-inch Deep Strike and Armour of Contempt, and a couple of other small interesting things. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought it would be interesting to talk over some rather interesting but very unconfirmed datasheet leaks, and talk about a few possibilities if they do wind up being right, which at this case is a big if. Games Workshop does seem to be having a particularly heavy rules drop for December. Those Grotmus detachments have certainly been keeping me very busy with a new detachment to talk about literally every single day. But to add to all that, we've got a major game update on the horizon. Games Workshop had said that there'd be a new balanced Dataslate this year, so that'll be sometime within December and before January, confirming that that was the case when they dropped the last one in early October. While some of the Grotmus detachments could be interesting ways to play their armies, and a few of them wind up being strong, I feel like for actually changing the way that 40k is played in general, the balanced Dataslate tends to do far more than that. And it does sound like for this one they're going to be altering quite a bit. Probably a bunch of core things, a whole bunch of new points, but also altering some core rules for Sisters and Genestealer Code, and doing something to help out core Codex Space Marines apparently. At the moment they haven't confirmed when it was going to be within December. I was guessing it would probably be sometime before Christmas, as besides teasing a few new models and things, they don't tend to do all that much in the sort of Christmas to New Year period, and it basically means that we're expecting it virtually any time, could be this week or later. As a result, people have certainly been really interested to hear any potential news as to what might be coming. There's usually a fair bit of speculation out there, and often people just play making things up. Certain people will be in the know as Games Workshop shares a lot of info with certain sanctioned content creators with NDAs and things, and often some of the speculation does wind up being accurate, though a lot winds up not being so. One thing this time round that I thought was interesting enough to talk about though, was that one person had leaked a bunch of things that wind up being perfectly in line with the next few Grotmus detachments to come out, stating they had got some info from playtesters. That seems to have done the rounds over various different Reddits, Facebook and Discord servers. I'd be happy to credit if they want me to, though often it's not exactly the thing that you want if you're sharing a few of Games Workshop secrets, though presumably they're happy to have their things talked about given that they've been sharing publicly. Basically it just seems a little bit more likely than most given that they called a bunch of detachments ahead of time, so at least have some sort of insider knowledge. Though even with that, I'd still obviously take these as rumour and speculation until we have confirmed rules from Games Workshop. We'll only really know for sure when we actually see the final content of the balance update, but between the track record and them sounding kind of plausible, I feel like there's at least a fairly good chance they turn out to be accurate. I guess we'll wait and see on that front though. In any case though, for the possible leaks that were stated, the first one that 3-inch Deep Strike might be nerfed across the game, instead basically blanket replaced with a 6-inch one. I feel like in comments in other places I'd also seen that suggested already, and now coming from another source it just seems like this could well be happening, and to me it does feel like quite a believable change that Games Workshop might choose to make. I feel like perhaps 3-inch Deep Strike units have a bit more impact on Warhammer 40k than GW might like them to. It's just incredibly powerful to be able to throw down a unit pretty much wherever they want to be on the board, near guaranteeing that you can score certain secondary objectives, and causing big problems for certain enemy units that are really quite fragile and need to hide behind ruins and things just by turning up and killing them. The units that have it do generally pay a points premium for the ability, maybe with the exception of the Tempesters Aquilons, who are certainly considered undercosted at the moment, though I'm sure will be getting nerfed in some form. And if you have an option to do it in a detachment, it's often one of the most notable things you can do, and a big source of strength for things like Grey Knights, Chaos Demons, or Necron Hypercrypts. If Games Workshop do indeed decide to just blanket turn it down to 6 inches, it will be a fair bit less impactful across the game. It is much easier to screen things out to 6 inches than 3, it just feels a lot more doable for the amount of area that your squads can deny, and basically it will be stronger than normal Deep Strike, but nowhere near as much. It'd mean that you'd no longer be able to do things like swipe primary objectives from the enemy if they just happen to have their unit not deployed fully centrally on it. That doesn't always happen, but could sometimes be a powerful ability. And for game balance, I guess things would need a bit of a redress. Inceptors would probably want a small points drop. Tempesters Aquilons might not need to go up quite as much as they would otherwise. And just in general, I feel like this would be a bit more of an option as opposed to an auto-include whenever you can do it. It'd definitely be a nerf to things like Necron Hypercrypt and teleporting Grey Knights and the like though, so it might not be ideal for armies that really need it as a source of strength. Hopefully Games Workshop will be able to balance it so it doesn't make their detachments unplayable by losing one powerful option. In general though, I don't think it'd be the worst change in the world. Maybe give armies a little bit more counterplay against it. I think perhaps it might be worse for Necron Hypercrypt, where perhaps more than anything else it feels like one of the main attractions to the detachment that would get very solidly nerfed by this. Obviously just a rumour at this point, as the rest of this is, but I'd be interested to hear your takes on it. Another thing that the leaker mentioned was suggesting that there could be a nerf to Armour of Contempt stratagems, basically the abilities that allow you to worsen AP by 1 when your unit's attacked, and instead of have them act against literally every enemy unit for a whole phase, they instead only work against the attacks of one unit only. I feel like that wouldn't be as impactful as the 3-inch deep strike change, but again would be at least a fairly relevant one, as those stratagems often tend to be popular ones in the detachments that use them. I would reduce their value a little bit if it does turn out to be true. In general, I think that this would have the effect of making it a lot less useful of a ranged stratagem debuff versus a melee one. As in general, I feel like it's often used on things like, say, Redemptor Dreadnoughts or Land Raiders, Chaos Vindicators or Leagues of Votan Land Fortresses. Get them in cover with a 2+ save, and then even AP2 shots will be saved on a 2+, and AP3 on a 3. It could still be good at the shooting phase, potentially bouncing the shots of really quite a strong enemy unit, and it still seems roughly equally useful in the fight phase, where you can make the AP of the enemy weapons worse, and then potentially that unit bounces off yours and you get to hit back hard. If this one does turn out to be accurate, I feel like it was perhaps a bit of a surprise one. It just seems like a slightly unusual thing to fix. The stratagems are definitely strong and a big source of strength to many armies, but also maybe not really to the point where they were problematic. I guess maybe the idea is that certain armies just might really struggle to kill things with 2+ saves, Armour of Contempt and cover. You'd ideally want AP3 or 4 firepower to have all that much of a chance, so perhaps the idea was to try and weaken it in that one specific situation, so it's not quite so auto-use on, say, one big scary dreadnought. I'd guess that if they did decide to implement that, it'd probably be one of the changes that are currently at the top of the balance data slate, in the same place as where they altered things like captain abilities or stratagem debuff abilities. I feel like a lot of people's first reaction to this would be, why Space Marines getting nerfed? Though Games Workshop basically have said that they are aiming to help out Core Codex Space Marines in some fashion in the next one, so I'm absolutely certain that they'll be getting some good stuff as well, and it's a bit pointless to try and judge this in terms of army strength until you have the full details. Definitely no point in trying to get upset about some unsubstantiated rumour giving a partial leak, so hopefully we can avoid that down in the comments this time. In general, if it did change like this though, I feel like you'd only really use it in the shooting phase if there's just one big scary enemy vehicle or shooting unit that you need to try and deflect the fire of, rather than say you've got a tank that could be focused by say 5 or 6 shooting units, but otherwise it'd be pretty well equally good in the fight phase, unless you've got some sort of big multi-combat on the go. Next up on the rumour list was a possible buff for Custodes Bikers. The apparent change here was going to 5 wounds and toughness 7, getting a small points increase, and some sort of boosted shooting on their salvo launchers. Custodes Bikers have been in a bit of a rubbish place since 10th edition came out. They've just been kind of directly inferior to the rest of the Golden Boys, with the extra speed, lance keyword, and firepower not making up for their points cost. It definitely does feel like a Custodes balance thing that Games Workshop could look at if they wanted to, and if this one did come to pass, then I think it'd make them a fair bit chunkier and more impactful on a per model basis, which I think is probably the better fix versus just repeatedly decreasing their points cost. They will get competitive at some point, but compared with where they've been in the past, they're kind of surprisingly similar to on-foot Custodes already. People have often said that it'd be nice to have a little bit more firepower on them, given that outside Forge World stuff, Core Codex Custodes doesn't really have all that much in terms of scary firepower things. Making the salvo launchers genuinely quite good against tanks I think would be a really nice change, just to give them more of a distinct battlefield role. I guess if the rumour does wind up to be accurate, and those changes do happen, it makes it less likely that they'd rewrite their special rules, which I do feel like for these guys are kind of a special level of bad. They can auto-advance 6 inches, which is nice enough but means that you're not dealing any damage this turn, and you can deal some mortal wounds when you move across enemies, which genuinely could add a fair bit of damage, but at the same time you sacrifice your shooting and melee for it, so it basically means that it's almost never a good option to try and do that. Perhaps giving those salvo launchers the assault keyword and a better damage profile would be a good way to help fix that though. At least they could use their special rule without feeling like they're completely missing out. Finally, for a slightly smaller and vaguer one, I'm uncertain if this is from the same source or not, but also seems to be from a list of detachments that got leaks, where most of the other ones got called out as correct. Apparently the Aeldari one for the Grotma's calendar might well be a vehicle detachment, so I guess an equivalent of the Space Marine Ironstorm or the new Necron Starshatter one, or things like that. I feel like given the ones that we know about from the Codex, this one does make quite a lot of sense. We've got the balanced War Host, the Aspect Host, the Wraith Host, Wind Rider Host, Harlequin, Inari and Seer Council. Those cover the vast majority of the main themes from the Aeldari, but a flotilla of Grav tanks isn't really one of them. I guess perhaps they could be folded into the Wind Rider Host, though I have a feeling that that one will probably more revolve around jet bikes. Could be fun if so, if any case. Could be good for Falcons, Fire Prisms, and maybe Wave Serpents perhaps. This one certainly seems at least fairly plausible. In any case though, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. How likely do you think that these will be to be accurate? And if they do turn out to be so, what would you make of things like the changes to the 3-inch Deep Strike and Armour of Contempt? I look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments as always. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I guess it's likely to be Grey Knights next given the Grotmas calendar, so subscribe or check back later if you'd like to see that. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel and keep the videos coming, Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, links down in the video description if you'd like to support the channel and keep the videos coming. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.